A very good evening to everyone, all our colleagues from across the Caribbean. Good evening and welcome to Thoughtful Thursday, Season 3, Session 2. I am Joseph Maynard, Principal of Combermere School, and it is my honor and pleasure to co-host this evening's session. We want to give a very special welcome to anyone joining us for the first time and inform you that these sessions are organized by the Caribbean Association of Principals of Secondary Schools, CAPS, in collaboration with CAPS technical support team, Restore a Sense of I Can, RSC. This evening in attendance are principals, deputy principals, and other administrators of our Caribbean schools. We continue to pray at this time for God's relief for our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines as they continue to cope in the aftermath of the multiple eruptions of the La Soufrière volcano. Returning from last week to co-host with me this evening is my good friend, Major Michael Boyce. I just want to say a little something here. He is my former student, and
yes,
he confessed to me that he cannot call me by my first name. Well, I have one on him because I can call him Michael anytime. Anytime. Michael, very glad to have you sharing with me this evening in this this program, and we are going to be very shortly going to be moving into our breakout room, but I want to introduce Michael at this time, Major Michael Boyce, as he takes control to lead us in this first session of the program. Michael.
Good evening, colleagues from across the Caribbean, and thank you, Mr. Maynard. Sir, it is indeed my pleasure to co-host this evening's program with you.
No problem.
Colleagues, as you would remember from last week, or if you're joining this week, I am the principal of Dighton Griffith Secondary School in Barbados, and I'm also the treasurer for BAPS. And in our breakout rooms this evening, we're going to reflect and share on a very timely and relevant topic. The question is, what was your greatest challenge in this COVID environment? Again, as we think back to the times from March last year, what was your greatest challenge in this COVID environment? And at this time, I'm going to invite Raj and his team from RSC to assign us to the various rooms where we'll discuss this topic. And I thank you once again for joining this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. And Michael, if you are there with us, a very interesting discussion we had in our group, a number of ideas. Yeah. And one of the things I found is that everybody was very keen to contribute. I think Kira led the way by reminding me that I was once in the position where I was not leading, but now I'm in the hot seat. So I appreciate, and she led off, and we had a very wonderful time. People talked about the fact that there is a significant divide that has developed because of COVID. Parents really are, for me, certainly one of the things that I would say is that the parents have become far more involved, but sometimes a bit too belligerent, and have created some challenges. I don't know, what about your side of the discussion?
we had a very healthy discussion in the room as well too. Some of our challenges had to look at first of all, how do we not lose an entire year or an entire generation? I'm sure, and that's a phrase we've heard very often in Barbados, I would say. Then also the question of equity of access to resources and came up for discussion as well. And how do we adapt in crisis? And the need to maintain communication with our students, while also providing emotional and this moral and psychosocial support to them. And then there's the whole thing too was the element of uncertainty, because I'm trying to be certain in an environment of uncertainty and managing expectations. Those are some of the issues that came up there. So I know that we normally put others in the chat. So we look forward to seeing what other persons share in the chat from their group.
Shared, but very rich discussions, certainly, and a lot to think about. Very, very much so.
Yeah.
At this time, Michael, I'm going to hand over to you as we move into the next segment of our program. The presidential thought, and I'm going to hand over to you at this time.
All right, thank you. So the presidential thought, and each week we are blessed with some remarks of some words of wisdom from one of the presidents in the association. And this week, our presidential thought is going to be delivered by Ms. Shara Carrington James. She's the president of our esteemed organization, the Caribbean Association of Principals of Secondary Schools. She also has the Trinidad and Tobago Member Association, APPSST&T. And she's been an educator for the last 33 years and now holds the post of principal of the Goodwood Secondary School. And she's happy to say that she's Tobagonian. Ladies and gentlemen, we give you our president, Madam Shara Carrington James.
Unfortunately, outside of the usual trauma sensitivity that we must have in our schools and classrooms, we are now beset with a pandemic. In all of it, we are expected to continue to engage in the task for which we were employed and commit to the fundamental purpose of schools. That is to ensure that students engage in high levels of learning. At this pandemic time, if never before though, the conversation must not be on randomly defined academic achievements, but a total embracing of the whole child tenets for promoting an environment in which a student is healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged. Colleagues, to ensure this, educators must work collaboratively and take collective responsibility for the success of the student. Working collaboratively and interdependently is not optional. One factor that underpins collaborative success is trust. So good evening, colleagues. I'm going to do something just a little bit differently this evening. For some of us, it's approaching our bedtimes, and some of our fun memories are of bedtime stories. Well, I don't have time for a whole story. I will use a publication, however, that is simple, clear, focused, and full of practical, implementable assessment tools and ideas on how and why trust works and can benefit our organizations and schools. I refer you to Ken Blanchard's publication, Trust Works. It's available on YouTube, so here goes. Once upon a time, a dog and a cat lived together with other animals and the humans who cared for them, the Berry Hills. But canine and feline did not trust each other, a situation that led to fighting, backbiting, and sabotaging that soon affected the whole household. Unless their conflict was resolved, all the pets would lose their home and be put into shelters when Mr. Berryhill took up his new job across town. A wise old parrot stepped in, teaching dog and cat the ABCDs of trust. The parrot taught them that one must be able, believable, connected, dependable in order to have a collaborative team. So, able, defined as a demonstration of competence and skill, it builds a trust. So one is expected to get quality results, to solve problems, to be highly skilled and use those skills to assist others and strive to be the best at whatever one does. B, believable. When one acts with integrity, then one is believable. And that's another way of building trust. So you're expected to keep confidences, admit when wrong, be honest, be sincere, be non-judgmental, and show respect for others. C, connected. When you care about others, you are connected, and so you listen well, you praise others' efforts, you work well with others, you show empathy for others. D, dependable. Maintain a certain amount of reliability if you want to be dependable. You are expected to do what you say that you will do. Be timely in your response, be organized, accountable for your actions, and of course, follow up consistently. In the Mindful School Leader, Brown and Olson 2009, they encourage that the brain's plasticity has huge implications for us as educational leaders, as even our seemingly deep-set, instinctual leadership habits and reactions are open to reshaping and redefinition. So the story continues. As each, dog and cat, became aware of the unconscious behaviors at the root of their hostility, dog and cat discovered how to change their reactions. A mutual transformation that created a happy, productive environment for all then resulted. And it came to pass that Mr. Berryhill, Mrs. Berryhill, Kyle, Billy, the dog, the cat, the parrot, the hamster, and the goldfish piled into an RV and traveled together to their new home in the city on the other side of the country, where trust reigned supreme, and they lived, more or less, happily ever after. Quick crack, monkey bricky back. That is how in Trinidad and Tobago we see the end of the story. I leave you with one video that encourages you to be the leader that the collaborative community can trust to get us through these times, these pandemic times, so that no child loses his or her way.
Oh no! I'm lost! Where's the line? It just went away. What do I do? Help! I'll be stuck here forever.
Do not panic! Do not panic! We are trained professionals. Now stay calm. We are going around the leaf.
Around the leaf? I don't think we can do that.
Oh, nonsense. This is nothing compared to the twig of 93. That's it. That's it. Good. You're doing great. There you go. There you go. Watch my eyes. Don't look away. And here's the line again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Soil.
Good.
And thank you, Madam President, for those very powerful and insightful words there, and also for the challenge that you've thrown out to all of us to be the type of leaders that we expect our followers to look up to and to crave to be. Thank you. We look forward to living up to that challenge as well. And now we move to our moment of movement. And I'm always reminded of the President's reaction to last week's session. Last week, we challenged you to move with a dance fitness moment by some members of our local group, Rhythm Tribe. And I'm sure you remember our president saying that she started her weight loss program with that workout routine last week. So you expect to see others taking part this week as well. This evening, we're going to change the pace a bit, and we're going to have a session of yoga conducted by one of the teachers in Barbados, Mr. John Yearwood. Let me just tell you a bit about John. John Yearwood is a certified yoga teacher. He trained in Costa Rica at the Marianne Wells Yoga School. He's also a school teacher here locally, as I said, for over 4 years, and he currently teaches technical drawing at the Lodge School. John is very competitive and comes from a long and eventful sports background. He enjoys challenges, with his latest path bringing him to yoga. He views yoga as a parallel to ideal life and a manifestation of effort, process, and results, which is not easily mastered and requires continual effort. He has a passion for learning, knowledge, and helping others reach their full potential by challenging themselves, and most importantly, encouraging them to enjoy the journey. So I invite you now, colleagues, to enjoy the part of this journey tonight as we share in John's Wolf Yoga session.
Hi, welcome to Wolfpack Yoga. I am John, also known as Yoga Wolf, and today I'll be your yoga instructor. Today we'll be doing a yoga session on the chair, so guess what? You're going to need a chair. Preferably a chair without any handles. Makes it a little bit easier. So without any further ado, let's get to it.
Please remember to take part, colleagues, tonight.
Let's start by sitting up nice and tall. We tend to slouch a lot in our chairs. So just pull your chest up, relax your shoulders down, plant those heels firmly onto the mat. Let's close our eyes and start to breathe. You're breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Some of you may find a bit more comfort in placing your right hand onto your chest and your left hand onto your abdomen, just to moderate your breathing, just to feel yourself breathing, just to relax your body. Allow yourself to be here with me. Relax the mind and body. Let's open those eyes up. Release the hands down and start to roll the shoulders backwards. Nice big shoulder rolls backwards.
I hope you're all taking part.
Time, making sure you get that shoulder mobility back, rolling the shoulders forward now. Nice and easy. Still moving with your breath. As you come to the front of the chair, take your time. Again, lift that chest up, relax those shoulders down. Tilt the head from left to right. And then we want to inhale the hands up into the sky and down to heart center. How this goes is you spread the fingers wide apart, reach the hands up and down to the middle palms together. And from here, with the hands down by the sides, we're going to lift the right hand up into the air and reach up through the right shoulder. The left hand does the opposite, reaching down by the side. Here comes the left hand up into the air, reach the left hand up, reach the right hand down. Trying to keep the shoulders level if you can. And now think of pulling up on a rope. We're trying to open at the sides of the body. You're reaching up on this rope and you're pulling this rope one hand at a time. Palms together, down through heart center. We're twisting the neck to the right. Twist, twist, twist. Try to keep your chest facing forward. And we're going to twist the chest to the left. Good. Shoulders still back and down. Hands on the thighs. So after that, we're going to tilt the head over to the right side using the right hand for assistance. Relax the left shoulder down. And it's the opposite side's turn. So you tilt the left ear over to the left shoulder and relax the right shoulder down. Breathing nice and easy again. As the left hand returns, we're going to place that left hand to the outside of the right knee, inhale tall and twist. Try to lift your chest up, lengthening your spine. Take that bulge away from your lower back. You're twisting with your chest, you're twisting your neck. Try to get the chin over the right shoulder, maybe not. And again, we go to the opposite side. If you want to hold on to the back of that chair for additional support to help with your posture, that's fine. Your right hand is to the outside of the left leg and we're twisting. Again, you can either look in the direction of your chest or you can look over the left shoulder. Slowly back to center. From here, we're going to pull that right knee up into your chest, roll the ankles around, elbows down, interlace the fingers behind the thigh, and start to extend that leg forward through the heel. Okay, push and pull, push and pull. You can feel a nice stretch in the hamstring here, again, still keeping the spine nice and erect. And we go to the opposite side, pulling the left knee into the chest, roll the ankles. Very good, point and flex as well. And again, just like before, hands behind the knee, trying to extend through the heel, straight forward. And gently inhale the hands up into the air, come down through heart center. Kind thoughts, kind words, kind actions. Namaste.
And I hope we all took part in that activity. I enjoyed it. There was so much movement and much sweating last week, but nonetheless, it was an enjoyable session. We thank John for having shared those tips with us, and I'm sure we can practice those offline as well. I now hand over to Mr. Maynard, who will introduce our featured speaker for tonight.
Thank you very much again, Michael. And he got it right, Mr. Maynard. I like that. Just a little thing that we have between us, but Michael is really a very wonderful person. I have a great level of respect for him. I would say that for sure. Now, this evening, we are going to be having our message or talk from Mrs. Joy Adamson. She is the Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, acting here in Education, Technological and Vocational Training in Barbados. And she is our boss, Michael and myself and all of us who are working here in Barbados. So we have to make sure we behave ourselves and that we treat her with the greatest of respect. She is going to be dealing with managing education in a COVID-19 environment. Colleagues, we want to introduce to you Mrs. Joy Adamson as she gives us her presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, all, and I want to first thank the members, the executive members from the association for inviting me to your Thoughtful Thursday. I want to congratulate CAPS for this insightful Thursday activity, and I hope that I'll be invited to other sessions. I did participate in the yoga, Mr. Maynard and Mr. Boyce, and I had to make sure that I didn't, and that's why my necklace and everything is off disheveled now, because I was actually doing the exercises. Good evening, colleagues from across the Caribbean. It is a pleasure to be here to share with you on my experience as the Acting Chief Education Officer, to share my story on managing a COVID environment. And I want to put a little twist to it, because I think that from the breakout group that I was in, and from what I'm sure all of you would have been sharing across over the last couple of months, over the last year, I don't want to repeat the same things again. So I'm going to do it from a perspective of Joy's story. My introduction, one of the things that I constantly state is that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4, verse 13. And that is what I live by. I'm here to share my story of how this scripture passage has allowed me to conduct the way that I have been conducting. Because I do have persons to deal with, like Major Boyce and Mr. Maynard and Mr. Chapman. So I really need to call for strength at times, correct? No, they're good people. I took up this post in October 2019. It was initially for 6 weeks when the then Chief Education Officer went on holiday. But then the Chief Education Officer was transferred, and I had the opportunity then to act as chief. Oh, what an honor. I was thrilled. I had been deputy, so I could handle it. Then March 2020 came. The Barbados situation changed. We had to go online, all of our classes from April to July 2020. We then in September went back face-to-face and we had blended. And then in January, we had a spike again and we went back online. So it was like a roller coaster journey for us here in Barbados. I'm sure it is the same for most of our colleagues across the territories. I've learned as Chief Education Officer to work with the Ministry of Health and Wellness here in Barbados, have a close working relationship with UNICEF and PAHO, who assisted us with getting PPEs for our schools, masks, and other equipment that we needed. I've had to work constantly with our unions and principal associations. I've had to engage our PTAs, our parents. Over the last year, I've worked on devising at least 2 sets of guidelines for how we're supposed to operate in the COVID environment at our schools, and guidelines for how to operate in an online environment. And we had to do this very quickly. And I'm sure the principals from Barbados would agree that I used to be calling on them constantly. We had subcommittee meetings, we had late meetings, we met on weekends. We had a tech drive here in Barbados for devices, and we were aiming to get over 10,000 devices for our students and for our teachers, because not all teachers also have devices. And if we are expecting them to teach online, we need to equip them with the tools. We've had to build up partnerships with the Barbados Light and Power, and I know the communication officer now I have her on speed dial, because when our students didn't have Wi-Fi access, when they didn't have electricity, we worked with Light and Power, and they turned certain households back on, and they assisted us, and they're still assisting us now. We've worked with Digicel, who've given us the SIM cards for our devices, and Flow, who's given us the MiFi devices. The government of Barbados put in place school monitors that we've placed in our primary, special needs, and nursery schools. We had to select, train, equip them, and then make sure that they were disseminated. And the emotional stresses from my principals, who are all tired, and I really want to give them a hand across the region. They've been working tirelessly. They haven't had a vacation. They're constantly working, because every time they develop a timetable, we had to change it. The psychosocial support that we had to then provide, and we actually have a hotline at some of our schools and in the Ministry of Education. We've had to make partnerships with several psychologists to deal with the emotional stresses, teachers, students, and yes, parents. So when I took over this acting position in October 2019, this was not on the cards. These were not the regular things that a chief education officer did, but I had to adapt. And with the cooperation of my principals, my teachers, there were parents who stepped up to the job, and generally people from the general public, we are here, we are getting through. I don't want to talk to you about those things. I want to talk to you about Joy's story, my story. How I've learned to change the stresses of working in this COVID environment to how we all need as leaders and as administrators to relax. Somebody said it in our group earlier. We now have to learn how to create certainty in an uncertain environment. I want to first start talking about my stress, and I have it there for everybody to see. The stresses that came with the job. Sleepless nights, the tremendous workload, the resistance that you get from persons, the need for constant stakeholder engagement, and yes, the sacrifices. Sleepless nights. How many of you as administrators wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about all the things that you didn't do the day before, the things that you have to do now? How many of you have a little book like I do, or a notepad and pen next to the bed, and when you turn at that time and you write down that note? That was happening to me constantly. And my body knew, okay, I go to sleep 10:30, 11, and then at 3 o'clock on the dot, I could set the alarm. I'm going to wake up. I had to break myself out of that. Melatonin does work, yes, but there are times where that stress of the sleepless nights then makes you tired, and it can make you irritable the next day. The tremendous workload that I now have. Now, there's still things that a chief education officer has to do. And we were reminded only yesterday that the hurricane season is around the corner. And therefore, as chief shelter warden, that is also on my shoulders. I have to make sure that shelters are in place, because the majority of the shelters on island are our schools, unfortunately. I still have to staff schools. I still have to make sure that principals are in place when principals go on maternity leave or they retire. I still have to make sure that my officers are satisfied and that they have the tools to do the job. I write a list every day, and I have that list. And then at the end of the day, after working real hard, I look back at the list and only one thing I can cross off. The workload increased in this COVID environment, because you have to balance what you were accustomed to be doing and what you now have to do in addition to that. During this environment, I met with resistance. The persons in the group will know that I'm constantly saying the only person who appreciates change is a wet baby. Generally, you will find that persons don't like change. And this is a change. This is new to all of us. There was a time where we turned back home because we forgot our watch. Then we turned back home because we forgot our cell phone. How many of you turn back now because you forgot your mask or your sanitizer? Not everybody is going to agree with the plan, but we have to take resistance in stride and be aware, like Jim Collins said, from good to great, not everybody is going to get onto the bus. Stakeholder engagement. Oh, I forgot my E there in my stress. Spell, yes, STRESS. Emergencies were my E's. They came up, they were forever coming in play. Circulars, memos, respond to this proposal, review this particular document. And they were coming fast and furious in between all the things that you actually had to do. Stakeholder engagement. I lost track of how many meetings I've had with unions, principal associations, parent teachers associations, donor agencies like UNICEF, PAHO, including CXC with the examinations, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the Ministry of Labor. It goes on. The meetings with class 4 teachers, persons transitioning from primary to secondary school, a lot of stakeholder engagement. And my final S, the one that I really feel strongly about and had to change, these long meetings, these working late nights, sometimes the last person to leave the Ministry of Education, working on weekends, and missing out on spending time with my aging parents and my grandson, who everybody knows Kai is the darling of my life. But those stresses I had to change. Therefore, I had to learn how to relax. And as administrators, you too have to learn how to relax. You have to become resilient. You have to be able to anticipate, adapt, and flourish. You have to be able to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, because it changes. We did not know in Barbados, we were ready to open schools on Monday. And then last Saturday, we were covered in ash. We're still covered in ash, and therefore we've had to delay school for another week. So we need to have another plan now. So we now have to clean up schools, and that was never on the cards. You need to be resilient. Don't become flustered if things don't work out, because sometimes as administrators, they're not always going to work out. We have to eat properly. And one of the things that I want to share with you is that have a proper breakfast, eat like a king, take your time on mornings and do not rush it. Do not aim to get to that desk at a particular point in time, even if you're working from at home. Make sure you have lunch. And that was something that, and I know that is something that a lot of my principals do not do. They skip lunch and they tend to eat later in the evening. That's not good for your health. So in this COVID environment, we have to make sure that we take time for ourselves, that 45 minutes to an hour. We make sure that children get it. And sometimes I find even teachers during that period of time, they find other things to do. You have to eat your lunch. You have to have your dinner. A dinner like a pauper. So as Adele Davis said, you eat big in the morning, a little bit then bigger, smaller, sorry, at lunch, and then we're actually going to move to dinner. You have to eat properly as we go through this COVID environment time. Let me tell you, administrators, this chief education officer has made mistakes. But I want all of you to know, my principals in the group and others, mistakes are proof that I am trying. Mistakes is an idea, it is sending the message, yes, you want to get things out there, you want to get them as quickly as possible. I've learned from my mistakes. There are times where I send a memo out or a circle out and I make sure every T is crossed and every I is dotted. And then when it is actually out there, somebody say, but you forgot to put the month in the message that you have or the year. Or you send out something so quickly, you put cancel when you really meant to put postpone. I've learned from those mistakes. And sometimes you have to pass it to 3 or 4 persons so you get several different eyes and not try to rush. Not try to rush in this COVID environment, although you want things done. I have learned that there's a need to assign tasks, delegate, develop that team around you that will work. They might be a team on paper, a management team, but you know the persons who work, pull those persons together. And that's what I've had to do. So I know the team of persons that I can rely on, who I will send to, and I will explain to that person, please review this for me. Please look over this for me. See if I have the grammar right. See if we've touched all the different areas. Share and delegate, because you cannot do it alone. As a leader in this environment, you have to look out for yourself. So assign the task. And the last thing, I bought an exercise bike. I've been trying to exercise in between. I used to go to the gym, but once COVID struck, I am not going back in there yet. So I have to exercise your mind, your body, relax at a particular point in the day. And I've started to do it. And yes, persons have told me, you're losing weight. So I'm feeling good about myself. In this COVID environment, these are things that we all have to do. So as we think about relaxation, as we think about the stresses, educators, decide which button you're going to press. Stresses will come, work around it. You saw the ant just now, walk around that leaf. But you also have to relax. There must be a balance between the two if you're to operate in this COVID environment. Sorry, I seem to be going backward rather than forward. Change will come. Change is mandatory. In October 2019, I was but a block of coal. But the change, the pressures, the stress has presented extraordinary results, and now I am shining like a diamond, and I will continue to shine. I am braver than I believe. I am stronger than I seem. I am smarter than I think. I want all of you to remember these words. As leaders, as principals, you too are braver than you believe. You too are stronger than you seem. You too are smarter than you think. This COVID will not last forever. We have to work through it now and get through it. We will get through it. This too shall pass. When I am traversing uncharted waters, Philippians 4:13. When I feel overwhelmed, Philippians 4:13. When I do everything right and unions keep knocking me down, or the public said, but why? Philippians 4:13. When I am overtired, but I know I still have to push on, Philippians 4:13. And when I thought I had crossed every T and dotted every I and forgot that ED, principals, deputy principals, all of those hearing my voice, Philippians 4:13. Mr. Chairman, Master of Ceremonies, it's been a pleasure serving you, because I will continue to manage in this COVID environment, ladies and gentlemen.
We want to thank our esteemed leader, Mrs. Adamson, for her tremendous words of wisdom. We know we have sometimes given you stress, ma'am, but thank you for keeping your cool and, hanging in there. And we really have been encouraged by what you've said to us this evening. Very much appreciated. I'm sure, Michael, you would agree wholeheartedly with the words shared with us by Mrs. Adamson this evening. I'm now going to hand over to Michael to say a few words and then to lead off in relation to the question and answer session.
Sir, am I agreeing by choice or by command?
Better agree.
I agree, sir. Yes, I did think it was very insightful. I actually jotted down a few notes. I like that. Relax, be resilient, eat properly, learn from mistakes, assign tasks, and exercise. Yes. And mistakes are proof that we're trying. Yeah. It reminded me of the human element, ma'am. Thank you. I know something that I keep saying to persons. We have to remember the human element in this whole exercise. And colleagues, we invite you to now engage the chief with your questions. And I see you have one in the chat. Please put them in the chat. Madam Chief, what was your greatest learning experience from this? What's your greatest learning, sorry, from this experience?
I was chatting with a good friend of mine today, and the individual remarked that at the beginning, my face is very expressive. And, and therefore in meetings, I've had to try to get that poker face. I think I'm getting there. And I've therefore had to learn how to listen and to take in what persons are saying, because everybody they're just saying from their perspective and not necessarily mine. So I've had to learn to listen, to allow them to speak, try not to judge what they're saying, and respond appropriately. And I think that is one of the things I've become a little bit more tolerant during this exercise. You're muted, Michael.
You said tolerance is one of the things you learned in this exercise. I'm taking note, Madam Chief. I'm taking note. I see Mr. Dwayne God has his hand up. You want to ask your question, please? Dwayne Goddard, you want to ask a question? Colleagues, as I said, please put your questions in the chat. Right. And there's someone asking whether they will get a recording of the message. I think we normally record the programs and they'll be available afterwards. Here's another question, ma'am. How have you adapted to effectively bringing new principles into place during this COVID environment? Interesting.
Yes, what we've tried to do, and it is doing virtually, I don't think we've met the principles faced on. Luckily, in September was when we would have had some new principles coming on, and in September we went back face to face. So we were actually working, at the ministry, so they were able to come in and they had the introductions, especially at the primary and at the secondary level. And what we would have done is that we would have engaged them there, and then the seniors responsible would have continued to meet with them. We have not obviously done as much training as we would like to do, because it is not the same when you're doing it virtually, but like for this week, these last couple of days, no offices basically were open. So we had to do everything online. So it is something new that we have to adapt to, and it is something that we will have to continue to do to train those principals as well. But we were fortunate in that September, when the majority came on, we were face to face.
Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues?
I want to say, Michael, that there are those who have said that Mrs. Adamson has been very authentic. She's been very real,
Yes.
speaking about things as they really are, because sometimes we don't, really speak from our heart as we might want to say. And I really am appreciative of the fact that our leader has done so. And I think many have complimented her as we see the comments popping up on screen. Yeah?
That's very
Thank
true.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there a new question there? How do you balance directive from your superiors and grumblings from those under your supervision? Trade secrets here, ma'am. Come on.
I realize from the names you're calling, we have quite a few persons there. I have to be very careful of how I answer that question. But you have to balance. There are times you get directives, and you have to make sure that as you communicate, because I have to, and I think this is something that I would have discussed. I had this discussion with Mr. Chapman only recently, in that we do get directives and we have to follow through with the directives, but I still also have to work with the principals and the teachers. So there has to be a balance. And sometimes we would sit down then together as a team to see what is the best approach to get this over. And so you give directions, or you give directives, and I think that the principals sometimes would have to read between the lines as to how things are to happen. And it is because we're seeing the big picture. And sometimes when you're working at one school or working in one classroom, you only see it from your perspective. But from the ministry, we have to do it from a wider perspective. And therefore, as from a government, as the Prime Minister would constantly say, we're looking at the big picture and see how it's going to impact from the little small man to the person at the top. So there has to be a balance, and we try to do that wherever possible. And, you know, to work with both parties.
There was one thing, ma'am, that I appreciated your comment. The fact that when you fail, it shows you're trying. That is something that is extremely, I think sometimes we're afraid of failure, and we have to recognize that failure is really the next step to success. So that was a thought that was really appreciated, for sure.
It's true, try, yes. You know, you're person's talk about me being authentic, and I just like to keep things real, and so I'm not offending anybody. And yes, Dr. McLean, Ms. McLean is saying the helicopter view is what I need to do, but I try to keep it as real as possible without offending. But you know, that is my approach has always been.
Madam Chief, I was saying that you are practicing the helicopter view when you're thinking about everyone and not only one person in a box. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have two other questions in the chat, ma'am. And as you watch your time, I'll just give you the first one. And it says, I get a sense that you have a good relationship with your principals. How have you developed and maintained this relationship with them?
I try to communicate with my principals regularly. I have a broadcast group that, you know, that once things happen, I send it out. Even if I send an email or correspondence, I send it out to all of my principals. I have all of their numbers, and they know that when they see me, and we have a good relationship. They will tend to respond if you don't get them the first time, tend to respond. So I've tried to build that relationship with the primary principals, secondary, the special needs. We tried wherever possible. If I don't answer them at a particular point in time, get back to them, even if it is later in the day. I saw your call, your missed call. I treat all of them with respect, and they also treat me, so it's reciprocal. But I try to build up that relationship. We have two here, and I'm sure we have quite a few in the group. And they can actually say, well, how do they think do I get through if I do, you know?
Michael, I defer to you, sir. No, I agree that you know, I think that's one whereby we're kept in the loop as to what is happening, because you're able to send. It's like personalizing your messages and so on, which is appreciated for sure. That is very much so. Now, I'm afraid that we are going to have to start wrapping up at this time, because we want to make sure that we are on point as far as guidelines.
There's one last question, Mr. Maynard. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
One last one, and this is: do you have any regrets? That's the final one we can take. Do you have any regrets?
It's a real hard question, and I can't really put my hand on any particular regret. I think that I've tried my best wherever possible, and I would have to think about that. I don't think that I have a regret that I can say. I can think that, as I said, the sacrifices that I've made, I don't think that I've lost out on any major, you know, accomplishment. I've tried wherever possible to balance it. So at this particular point in time, no, I don't think so, that I have any regrets. That I would wish that I would have had a smoother ride, but it is a learning experience. Yeah, it is a learning experience, and I will continue to grow from strength to strength with the Lord's help.
Thank you very much, ma'am. At this time, we want to thank you very much for your contribution to our program this evening. And I'm sure, as you've said, that you would love to come sometime again and make another contribution. I'm sure that would
I mean, to listen, to participate.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
That can be
listen, that would be quite easily facilitated, ma'am, for sure. Okay. But thank you very much for joining with us. And at this time, colleagues, we want to thank you for your keen participation this evening. Please remember to complete the evaluation using the link provided in the chat or in our emails. Your feedback is critical as we continue to improve these weekly sessions in the interest of education in our schools across the Caribbean. It was a pleasure. I can assure you of this, co-hosting this session in our series with Mr. Major Michael Boyce. And I want to thank him for being such a good co-host, because he knows that anything happens, I will be speaking with him. Thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate it. And I just want to say to everyone, continue to be safe. And I invite Michael at this time to give us the final word. Michael.
Thank you, sir. Before we actually go have the final word, we're going to join Mr. Curtis Grave, the president of the St. Vincent and Grenadines Principal Association, who will give us a status update, a report on the situation in our sister island, St. Vincent. So we look forward to hearing from Mr. Graves. Is he ready, colleagues?
I'm sorry, but Mr. Graves is not in as yet, so we would move on.
We'll move on. Okay. In that case, colleagues, we will continue to remember, we invite you to continue to remember St. Vincent in your prayers and its support. I know certainly here locally, I heard an appeal on our news tonight for us to bring items of relief to help with the relief efforts. And we're looking forward to that. And we want to thank again Mrs. Adamson for having shared tonight. We want to thank all of you for having come out tonight. I think it was an enjoyable session. I really loved and enjoyed everything. And I think it gelled really well together. The presidential thought, then the moment of movement, and then the featured presentation. I think they really gel as though we all sat down and we planned it, and we know it didn't really happen like that. We thank you very much for that. And as we go, please continue to be safe, as Mr. Maynard encouraged you, and we look forward to sharing with you next week. Please, please, please don't forget to complete and the feedback form. Your feedback, as Mr. Maynard said, is very important for us. And as one of our local news anchors used to say here in Barbados, it's time to strike up the band. We're out of here. Good night, my brothers and sisters from across the Caribbean. Have a wonderful night.
Good night. Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.